Are there any Puerto Ricans in the audience, please? Any Puerto Ricans in the audience? Wow, I'm the only one. I am like a unicorn, I told you. All right, so welcome to Drawing in Color, the proper writing and drawing of people of color in comics. This will be a 5-hour session. Actually, I thought it was a really good idea to get people to talk about this. There's a lot of times that we don't have control of our own images, and a lot of times, even when we do our images, we kind of don't know what to do ourselves because we haven't seen it so much. We haven't seen it modeled very much. So this is kind of like just a conversation about that and a lot about the future to come, because there's a lot of things going to happen. So this is my intro. So here we are in 2017, after years of history of colonization, of colonialism, of genocide, of slavery, of Jim Crow, of reservations, of anti-Asian laws, of segregation laws, decency laws, eminent domain, and alt-rights. After countless hours of Amos and Andy, and Speedy Gonzalez, and Yum Yum Eat 'Em Up, and Fu Manchu, after exclusion, demonization, caricature, and whitewashing, even in our own stories, after generations of being excluded from even having one superhero look like one of us, under a presidency that attempts to erase every step forward we've made and then some, we sit here in this room, all nice and comfy, all pretty and shiny, and we get to discuss and strategize and plan and even fight. And there we say, attack. Most of all, take control of our own stories and fantasies and dramas, without explanation, without justification, of our own beautiful and sacred images. So let's give a round of applause for our impressive warrior creators. Ahwen Mance, Tanika Stutz, Casimir Lee Iskander, Rupert Kinnard, Ivan Velez, and Victor Hodge. Let's start that PowerPoint. So this is a Mac, so please excuse me, I'm a PC guy. It works. Starring Ahwen Mance. These are some of these images going pretty fast. By the way, he's a Virgo. If Ahwen wants to explain anything right now, she can. Or he can.
This is an image from a zine, comic zine called The Little Book of Big Black Bears. And it's 2 nursery rhymes about celebrating black bears. And
yes. Beautiful.
Black bears are underrepresented. Yes. And this is from the second half, which is called The Black Teddy Bears Picnic.
Excellent.
And this is from something that I did a few years ago before the scandal on Fox News about Black Santa, and it's called The Blues for Black Santa. And this is from the centerfold, which has 4 Black Santa's awesome red and white outfits.
It's beautiful.
And that is from, that's me talking about having straightened hair from a comic called Requiem for a Hot Cold.
Very nice.
And this is a 1-page comic that I did a little bit earlier this year, 2017, called The Other Red Planet. And it's a pretend space voyage of 3 people from the Bay Area going to the reddest county in the country and observing life there. It's actually Roberts County, Texas, if you were wondering, where almost 94% of people in Roberts County voted for Donald Trump.
I guess this is a good time. Can you give me a short bio, like really?
I do. I'm an English professor at Mills College, and I write on black writers and literary history of the 19th century. And I also draw a lot of pictures and I've started doing comics more recently, like in the last couple years, but my main art project had been 1001 Black Men, a series of black portraits that I did from 2010 to very, very early 2017. And so I really am interested in race and representation.
Very nice.
And that's one of the pieces from 1001 Black Men.
I love that palette.
Which is literally 1001 drawings. It's not hyperbole. This is one of my favorites, and I numbered each of them.
Oh, this is your secret comic crush.
It's really more my secret comic role model.
Okay.
From the mid '80s. I guess a lot of people feel the same way about the Hernandez brothers and Love and Rockets, kind of writing this kind of queer sensibility and people of color in comics with really nuanced stories. And I just think these are folks who really, for me, knew how to draw women and different kinds of women. And I was just so impressed by the work. It was really influential for me in the late 80s when I was just starting to come out as a queer person and also falling in love with comics.
So if you met Hopi in the bar, you wouldn't go home with her?
Well, now I'm old and married, so back in the day, maybe.
Well, you know, she's been through some changes too, which is what I love about the characters in those stories. They age just along with us.
Yeah.
Character you would like to kidnap and save. Who is this? Anybody recognize her?
It's Tony.
That's right. From Next One. Now, why do you want to save her? What's going on?
Yeah.
What's up with her? Why do you want to save her?
Well, I don't think that was me.
That wasn't you?
No.
Oh my God. That's what you. I'm so ashamed. Who was it? Anybody? Wait, somebody sent me the image and then I hop into it. All right, okay. All right. And you're safe for it. It's a secret. You didn't give us one. Okay. That's me, really fast. I'm a Sagittarius. And this is some of my stuff. Tales of the Closet. Back in '80. Oh my God. This is actually one of the covers for gay comics back in the old days. Yeah. Yes, I did a story a long time ago about some gay teenagers in a high school in Queens. And this is their tales. Tales of the Closet. But it's actually one of the first ones, I think, that dealt with teen youth, so I'm very proud of that. This is something I'm working on now, The Root. I'm going back to before Columbus and trying to explain why this country is so fucked up. And this is one of the characters that, by the way, doing the research for these characters, it just breaks my heart when you just see what happened during those times. But that's another story, another panel. Some of that. Some of the safe sex, you are not alone kind of campaigns we had back in Hedrick Martin during the early 80s. This is a rejected cover for Jennifer Camper's Juicy Mother, but I still like the image, so fuck it. I don't know why I didn't like it. I thought it was great. I think her publishing house thought it was too violent, and they didn't want to show women in that light and that kind of stuff. I'm like, that's another stuff. Also oral, my first Bara porn comic, which I'm very proud about. And this guy looks like Afterboy, which was also one of my secret crushes. Except Afterboy with muscles in the gut. And this is the stories I'm doing now. This is America. It's taking me forever. I got a creative capital grant to do this. And it's taking me forever, so I'll probably be around 90 when I finish it. But what a good way to spend the rest of your life, you know? Yeah, this was the back in NYQ, back in the old days. This is during the AIDS crisis. This character found out he was HIV positive. Back in the day, it was before the cocktails. So, which literally, you know, many people thought it was a death sentence. And my secret crush is Ultra Boy. Ultra Lad is Ultra Boy. Ultra Boy. Ultra Lad. But only when Dave Cockrum drew him, because look at that. And this is the one I want to kidnap and save. I'm sorry. I just hate the way they do her every time. Except George Perez. He was on the right track, but then he lost the track. Save for his Kimba. Casimir, did I say it right? Casimir Lia Shikanda?
Casimir is totally fine, yeah.
Okay, Casimir. Wait, he's a Leo. Wait. I gotta go back. Hold on. He's Taurus, Leo rising, Aquarius moon. Oh.
Oh, what is it? That sounds like a bad thing. Everyone's like, oh no.
I can't get with you now. I'm just a stinky Leo.
That means he has Kanoa in the cupboard. Okay, so, beautiful images. Can you want to say anything about that?
These are just sketches I try to do every day to keep loose. I'm really big into caricature, and that will be, I feel like a lot of what I'm talking about today, like, for me, like, writing and the narrative is important, but also, like, physiognomy of queer characters, like, is, like, finding how to, like, represent my features is really important for me. These are just illustrations I've done for, like, ad campaigns and stuff. I was an illustrator and animator before I was a comic artist. Those people have never forgiven me for leaving. So when I first started doing cartoons, it was just like really beautiful, colorful pages that didn't tell any kind of story. I didn't know how to tell a story at all. But I thought it'd be nice if I put as much detail as I could into a page, and it turns out that's not how to make a comic. But
Actually, I disagree with you because that one panel has so much story in it.
thank you.
Yeah.
This is for a comic I did for the Slate about the arrest of 17 trans women in Malaysia, and how a lot of those laws are still around. A lot of those laws are, enforced by the Islamic government, but they're actually British colonial laws. This law in specific that caused these 17 trans women to be arrested was about how it's illegal for men to dress as women, and it's pretty disgusting. It's like a British law to, civilize us. Yeah. I love characters. I love drawing couples I know.
I can't take my eyes off the dildo, I'm sorry. It's so beautifully drawn.
So after being frustrated for years of being an animator, I got back into comics by asking all my friends to write me short fantasy stories. And I made those into comics, and this is part of that whole project.
Wow.
I did a No Joy sex toy, and that was really fun, and I got to just I decided that for the time being, I'm going to just have my comics star people of color, and not make not have any huge justification for it, and I find that that's a pretty comfortable place for me to be at the moment. More sketches, more my daily warm-ups.
You did this in a day?
Yeah, I just try to I try to work with many styles because I work as an illustrator as well. So I try to do cartoony and realistic because I also am called upon to do comics for education and journalism comics. It's really fun. It's good to get loose.
Is this I'm sorry for the techie question, but is this you do this graphically, digitally?
This one I do digitally, yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
More sketches. Yeah.
I want this painted on my wall in my house. It's so nice. Catch me a secret comic crush.
So I did not have a lot of representation of people of color when I was a kid, so my two secret cartoon crushes were Basil of Baker Street, who was an aloof mouse, and Max from the Goofy movie, who is a dog, but I read as a person of color as a kid because, he had all the same fears and hopes that I had. Yeah, it's sad that neither of them are humans, And characters I'd like to kidnap
And save.
is every queer character from a Seth MacFarlane property because I hate those worlds and I feel so bad. If you're a woman or a queer person in that world, I'm I know you're not a real human being, but I wish you could come to a better world. It's not run by a ironically racist human being. That'd be great.
Save Meg, save Meg, save Meg. Save Fort Picasso. Okay. That's good for later on tonight. Afterwards, you know that about midnight tonight, the party you have, right? The special leather party. Okay. Rupert Kennard. By the way, this man has been a groundbreaker. Here you go, Rupert. Tell me a little bit about your career, Rupert.
I started when I was a kid. I was really into superhero comics, and I became kind of popular in my neighborhood when I was able to draw Batman and Superman. And eventually I started creating my own comic characters. And after a while, I realized that I created all these characters that were white, and they didn't reflect my own community and my world. So I ended up creating a superhero called Superbad, and he was very revolutionary and kind of the African-American version of Captain America. And eventually I ended up creating, this is Superbad.
Yeah.
The whole idea with Superbad was that he had this giant throat that would frighten white people. And yeah, so those were a couple of the first influences, in terms of the superheroes that I was involved with, that I enjoyed.
It's funny. It's this style was totally used by the artists, in Marvel Comics during the '70s. I mean, Luke Cage that's totally Luke Cage.
And yeah, the Brown Bomber was largely based on Joe Louis. Joe Louis's nickname was Brown Bomber, so I created a character around him. the showcase image was on the cover of an arts and entertainment section of the Chicago Sun-Times. That was one of the first pieces I had published. And there's a drawing of the Brown Bomber holding up the Hulk next to a picture of me standing with Stan Lee, which I got the opportunity to meet in 1976.
Cartoon Museum.
The first collection of my comics were published in 1992. It was called BB and the Diva, and they're also featured in the permanent collection at the Cartoon Art Museum. I was able to do some illustrations for the book Young, Gay, and Proud, which featured images of the Brown Bomber and Diva throughout. And this other photo is just a photo of some of my comrades in comics, Alison Bechtel, Chris Kovic, and Howard Cruz. When I ended up going to Cornell College for school, and the Brown Bomber was featured on the editorial page every week. And so that was the beginning of my using the Brown Bomber as a way of expressing my own political beliefs. And at that time, it was mostly, the comic strip mostly involved what was going on campus. At one point, the black students on the campus wanted to raise money to establish a scholarship fund. So we put the Brown Bomber on a t-shirt, and we sold 300 shirts. And then a year later, I had the Brown Bomber come out as a gay character. So it's an act of being subversive. And this is that one comic. I did a series of comics that basically had these dark squares and had the Brown Bomber contemplating being able to be himself on campus. And the last panel basically has someone knocking on a closet door asking if the Brown Bomber was in there and would he come out. And the Brown Bomber basically says, obviously, he doesn't understand what he's asking. And the thing is, this happened in, I want to say, 79. And in 79, the concept of coming out wasn't nearly as strong as it eventually came to be. So it was a kind of a highlight in my career at that time.
And we'll talk about this kind of subversion later, where people who only have a platform sneak in images that they think that people need, but they don't know that they need yet.
This is a strip that I think embodies what I was trying to do within my strip, which was, in a way, really acknowledge that I had a unique perspective within the world of gay male comics. I don't feel that there were so many gay male comics out there, and I don't feel as if there was very much self-examination of what was going on in our communities. And I think this cartoon more so represents what I thought was a black gay male sensibility in cartoons.
Do you think the Brown Bomber would have came out a little different if you were like raised on the East Coast?
No.
Really? Okay. Okay.
This actually is the strip that I thought really represented what I was doing within the gay male community, because this is basically a gay leader basically saying that he doesn't really like drag queens, he doesn't like the leather boys, we should get rid of handicapped people of color, but then he says he just wants to concentrate on getting the rights for gay white men.
Okay.
And this is just information about the characters, what kind of how I saw their backgrounds. It kind of represents what I thought, what I interjected in my characters, those parts of me. I love sweet potato pie. I love the music of the Temptations. So I set those things up as the Brown Bomber's weaknesses. So if he was going off to battle crime and he heard a Temptations record, he'd stop in his tracks and savor it before he continued his daring do.
Was there a doll created of the Brown Bomber?
Yes.
Oh, was it you could buy it in stores and stuff?
No.
Just like a figure.
When I met my partner of, at this point, 26 years, our first anniversary, he had a Brown Bomber doll custom made.
Oh, man.
And so it's been 40 years, since I started drawing the Brown Bomber and Diva. And I said earlier in a panel discussion that I really thought that being a part of this conference was a great way to celebrate that milestone.
Excellent. And your secret crush, the cast of Johnny Quest.
Well, now this was on TV in the 60s.
Yep.
And I'm this young kid, and I'm watching cartoons, and all of a sudden, you can't even imagine, bam, Johnny Quest hits the TV screen, and I'm not seeing any women. And I'm like, what's going on here? And I always felt like Johnny Quest's father and Bruce Bannon were like, together. And then there was Johnny Quest and Haji. And I always loved the idea that Haji was a young man of color, and he and Johnny Quest had their thing, and Bruce and Johnny Quest's father had their thing. I mean, I look back on it, and it was really sick what my young mind had created that was nowhere in the script of the cartoon.
Remember when they used to wrestle on the beach without the shirts? It was so cool. And you didn't tell me which one would you like to kidnap and save? Which character?
I would probably say Garfield. Because even within my strip, I wanted to make fun of comic strips that dealt with talking animals. And because for me, it was a little too cutesy. So there's one strip where I also made fun of smart alecky little kids. So I had the brown bomber turn into baby bomber, and he and Calvin of Calvin and Hobbes are flushing Garfield down a toilet. So Garfield.
Your safe word is kumquat?
Just because I like the sound of the word.
That's a really dangerous safe word. Okay. Tanika Stotts. She's Leo.
Leo.
That's it. My father was a Leo. I have issues with you too. Okay, so can you tell me a little bit about your career?
Hi, I'm Tanika Stotts. I am the co-founder of Beyond Press, which in 2014 went to Kickstarter with a small little idea from my co-founder, Spay Our Monster, which was to see unabashedly queer heroes in science fiction and fantasy. Little did we know, 350 plus submissions later, that when we hit Kickstarter, we would fund in under 24 hours, and we would sell out of our books in 6 months. Wow. Beyond the queer science fiction and fantasy comic anthology, also went on to win a Lambda Literary Award, and changed my entire life from here on out.
Woo! That's great. That's wonderful.
Spay, my immortal partner, is not present with me right now, but he has all my Twitter DMs telling me how much I miss him. So this is our logo. It's something that was concepted after I decided to make our second book, where he let me take the reins as far as the conception of the work, which was while I was working on Beyond. I love it. It is my baby. It is my life-changing book. But what happened is I didn't have a whole lot of people of color in that book. And I have a whole lot of people of color who are my friends. I've got people of color who are obviously my family. So, I was feeling a little dismayed. So when this symbolism came forward, it embodied everything that I wanted, and therefore Elements Fire, an anthology by creators of color, was born next.
Excellent.
This is the book, actually. This book was probably one of the most nervous-inducing books I've ever done in my entire life, because I finally wanted to say, sorry, no white people. And I did it with no shame. Pretty much what I did is I took and made a platform for creators of color to have their own voice for a change, for you to tell stories that weren't revolving around slavery, had nothing to do with some queer, twisted death ending. No one's getting fridged. We're our own main characters. We're the goddamn heroes, and no longer some token sidekicks. amazing people in my life who came together, believed in the same journey as me, gave me their time, their talent, let me pay them money, tell them that they're no longer worth the bottom rung that other companies would see them as, and that they no longer have to break their arm for somebody else's vision. You don't need white narration, you need your own narration. So that is where fire came from as far as being the main theme of our first book. I am full of fire. I shit fire. I spit fire. I traveled the country as a spoken word poet for 6.5 years. I worked for National Poetry Slam. I did all of the nationals. I ran the gamut, and why the hell are there so many amazing creators of color in poetry, and yet comics sometimes feels like a blizzard? It was really weird to me, so I decided to start influencing any way that I could and putting my own activism into comics just as I had into poetry.
Before I go to the next panelist, I think maybe I wanted to insert that question. The first time you realized that, well, for me, personally, when I used to write comics and I used to draw comics, I would kind of default, like put white characters there even though they didn't need it. It just felt like, like for some reason it needs to have a white character in there. And then little by little I started realizing that maybe this is kind of like brainwashing, and this is basically fear working and stuff like that, and doesn't serve the story at all. When did you realize that you didn't have to put like only white people in the stories?
Problem, I think, is I always knew, and I was afraid. I was afraid that it wouldn't be accepted. I was afraid of how people would respond. It was my own internal voice that kept me chained up. So there was no real coming out moment for me. It was more just a late blossoming of what the fuck was I caring for. I just felt like I was my own worst enemy in that entire situation, because my family and my life situation, nothing has ever held me back from being black, from being me, or anything like that. It was just all the subconsciousness up here going on. So when did it kind of spark? I can't even really relate to a point, because I've always just been putting myself into my own work, since poetry into comics.
What about some of the other panelists? You guys have like very long and varied careers. Was there a moment when you realized that, well, I don't have to put white people in my stories? Or was there some kind of like dramatic shift like that? Or did it just come naturally and you didn't even have to think about it?
Well, so much of the commentary that I feel as if I featured in my comic strips pretty much did deal with communities that were marginalized. So a lot of times I felt that I had to have a white character. In fact, I was in college when I created a character called the Vanilla Cream Puff. And I actually, that name came from what I ended up calling the president of the college when the black students were dedicating a tree to the memory of Martin Luther King. And time after time, that tree was being vandalized. And so at one point, the black students replanted a tree, and it was a young tree. And the president of the college decided that he needed to be a part of that ceremony. So in his words about the tree, he said that he had met Martin Luther King at one period, and that the tree was kind of like Martin Luther King, and that the tree was stubby and funny looking. Oh. And so I decided within my comic strip, there were only a few people there for the dedication, but I felt they needed to know the exact words that the president of this college used to describe this tree. And so I put it in context of a comic strip, and I didn't say that it was the president of the college, but I drew him like the president and had a little cape and DC on his stomach and called him the Vanilla Cream Puff. So there were ways that I felt like I had to incorporate white people to kind of just make my message.
Victor, I know you had something.
Otherwise, they missed the point. Get it? No, I'm just kidding.
You said, okay.
Yeah,
I'm Victor Hodge.
His stuff is coming up. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. I don't think I ever thought I was supposed to make black characters. All the characters were supposed to be white. It didn't even seem like anything unusual. I didn't see black characters on TV, really. I mean, Jefferson's and Good Times. They weren't really in comics. There was Black Lightning, but everybody else was white, so I thought it was supposed to be white, but I didn't make it a reflection on me. It was just something that just was. So I was obsessed with Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. I would write little stories, do the illustrations, and everybody was white. But they were different characters. And I don't know when it clicked in. I just created my own black detectives. They were based on the Hardy Boys. They were based on Dana Girls, which is all that whole little Edward Straitmeyer world. And I don't think there was any real moment like, I was like, oh, I can make everybody black. No, everybody's supposed to be black, but I'm from D.C.
Did it feel good?
I'm from D.C., so D.C. is Chocolate City, so that's all I know is black people. So at some point, everybody just became black. So.
Very cool.
I felt more let down that everybody was always white than I ever did that I wasn't personally putting more people of color into things. Oh God, what shame.
Yes. Tanika's secret comic crushes. So who is she? Demonia?
That's Demona.
Demona.
But you know, anyway, she's hot. Anyway, that's Xanatos.
He's hot too, yeah.
Yeah. Don't actually yell that at Jonathan Frakes. He will then have security look at you.
Okay.
Not that I know that, but I do because he was filming Leverage in Portland, and I was like, yo, Xanatos! Anyway.
Wasn't he her servant?
Yes. In my bondage, freaked out 16-year-old mind fantasy of pending porn? Yeah, it was totally going down that way.
Okay.
But, you know, Xanatos always been to Demona, and Demona always whipped everyone's ass. So, that's my power right there.
And the character Tanika would like to kidnap and save. Why? Why Miles Morales?
Why not? Okay. No offense, just why not?
I know he's in Marvel. I know. But he is a beautifully drawn character. I will say that. I haven't seen many characters drawn that well.
And for me, having this influential character who has now influenced my current generations of nieces and nephews who are now growing up, when they ask me for good books, you know, we start off with things like this. And then they have questions that they ask me, like, I didn't really enjoy this one part, or why does this seem very overtly racist in my brain, or why is this making me feel ashamed of who I am, especially because we are a very lovely mixed race family at this point. This is a character that I would like to save, and I don't even want to mention the Nazi company that puts it out, or Iperomiter, but just gonna say, you know, you put your dollars into someone's pocket and they put it into hate campaigns, you gotta start thinking, and you need to start thinking fast, and you need to stop, because if this is what you're going to keep in an eternal machine, that's never gonna go anywhere positive, no matter how much you close your eyes, cross your fingers.
But it's very hard because for me, American children, they don't really have a mythology that's really American, and this is like the substitute for it. And it's almost like worship. And it's so hard to get them away from that to see things. But we're doing our work, right?
Yeah, we're doing our work. Yeah. I mean, I have plenty of other stacks for them to read now. And as I keep promoting or pushing other creators to make their own works into final books and to get them agents and to teach them the limbo of getting through the literary game, that's where we're at.
Right. Safe word is crown.
I like to wear it.
Victor Hodge. Now it's going to get juicy. Watch.
I'm Victor Hodge. This is my first panel. Thank you. You're a good crowd. It's not as bad as I thought it would be.
Now we draw the B on his forehead.
I do a comic book, Black Gay Boy Fantasy, set in D.C. This young man, Neil Jordan, he wants to be an activist. He wants to be involved in his community, his black gay community, black gay lesbian, blah, 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 you know. I'm sorry. He wants to be involved in his community. He wants to be politically active. Most of the characters in my books, I've been doing this for years, but
in black and white only, right? Now it's color.
I'm working with color.
Working
with color. This is new. It's Tyler.
You can grab the mic if you want.
Okay. No.
Yeah, yeah, push it out towards you.
Be the diva.
People-
Be the diva you
Oh,
are.
stop, don't say that. Not a diva.
There you go.
Hey.
Okay.
Okay.
My characters are unapologetically black and gay.
And
They can
sexy
be
as fuck.
loud. Oh, that's something new that I've come up with. That's hero and gentle citizen. I'm kind of
Really?
obsessed with Superman. Oh, I'm sorry. Superman and Lois Lane. So this is my Superman and Lois. Well, he's not a woman, but you know, so he always gets into situations and he always gets rescued. I've done one comic, but the rest will be just like one-shot pictures.
That's beautiful.
This is The Watchers. This is something else that I've been playing with. My supernatural comic book. He's an immortal, and he forces this other man who's a spellbinder to come with him to like fight supernatural events. And oddly so, it's a supernatural book, but Dave Davenport and Justin Hall convinced me to draw porn, so their first appearance is actually a porn story and hard to swallow. So it wasn't intentional, it just worked out.
You ever think about doing it for the teen market, the young adult market? Because I could see this for them too, and I think they would eat that up. You just gotta erase that porn for a little while.
I don't think about children a lot.
Okay. It's beautiful.
So this, I'm starting to experiment with putting the brothers together. Having the black man with the black man is no reflection on any other type of relationship. I just like to see the brothers because that's what I'm used to in DC, which is not reflected all that much. So I'm just playing with new images.
Yeah, but isn't it kind of sad? It's such a rare image.
Well, it really is, and I tell my partner all the time, it's stupid, it really is, but in commercials, you never have two black men in the car together unless they're going to McDonald's. Pay attention, check it out, it's going to happen.
Dun, 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 dun. Okay.
So this I just started playing with, one, learning how to use color, but also just putting black men in different type of environments. So they're minotaurs and experiment with fairies and vampires, and you don't see a lot of that.
What program did you use for that?
What program?
Yeah.
That's Photoshop.
Photoshop?
Yeah, it's just simple.
Oh. Does anyone use like Manga Studio at all?
Yeah.
Because I'm like falling in love with that, but that's neither here nor there. Okay.
You just can't color in CMYK with it.
No, but you can just transfer to Photoshop.
Yeah, we just yell at you all the time. No,
This is nice.
So this is a panel from my comic. I didn't have the tones of gray in it. That's a new thing that I'm doing since I was just trying to bump it up a little bit because everything's kind of starting to blur, and I think I'm supposed to move forward in my craft. So I just used 3 different tones of gray and just see what I can come up with.
It's nice.
And so once again, this is the beginning of when I started experimenting with vampires. So they just had to be hot. They just had to be hot. And so that's my main character, Neil Jordan, and that's his lesbian gal pal, Zelda. And Zelda's actually, none of my stories are really based on anything, they're just incidents, but she's physically based on my lesbian gal pal from back in the day who actually is in Oakland.
Okay.
Yes, Oakland.
Your secret comic crush.
So, once again, there wasn't much to choose from of color, but I mean, he was almost naked, so that was kind of hard. Yeah.
I think he was Puerto Rican. Wasn't he Puerto Rican?
We can make him Puerto Rican.
Yeah, I think
We can go with that.
Jorge of the Jungle. And who you want to kidnap and save?
Mr. Terrific.
Mr. Terrific.
He's from the JSA, Justice Society of America. I think it's a shame that he's supposed to be the 3rd smartest man in the world behind Lex Luthor and Bruce Wayne.
Right.
But, you know, I'll take it.
Okay.
I'll take it.
And your safe word is Cosmo.
Because they're delicious.
And you said an email and it makes you feel very safe. Round of applause, please. We're a little halfway through. So, how to properly create a character of color? By the way, when I asked a question before about the realization that you don't have to add white characters onto a story, that was a really tough time. When I was a kid, I was really struggling with that because it didn't feel valid. I mean, it didn't feel like official if it was like different, right? And since, you know, when you're a kid, you copy all the heroes. So you're copying Thor and Spider-Man and Mr. Fantastic and all these characters, but none of them were characters of color. So when you shifted and changed them, they look like fakes. So it always kind of one of these things. And I know that a lot of the kids that I'm teaching now, they're struggling with the same thing, especially with manga, because they're all Japanese characters, yet all Japanese characters, yet so blonde, but they're having a tough time to transferring their own culture and identity onto those characters. And I'm really trying to push really hard, but they just want to put those big eyes and the blonde hair and the little frilly things. So that's something I struggle with too right now. Does anybody you have something about that?
Yeah. So I'm an immigrant, and for me, while we were, I think it was sort of out of desperation, actually, I had to like start making characters of color. I didn't need to in Malaysia because I was, you know, surrounded by people of color, and I guess I didn't really question the fact that most of the characters I created were white, and honestly, that was what a lot of people wanted while I was living in Malaysia. But then I did my grad school program in the Center for Cartoon Studies in White River Junction, you know, emphasis on the word white, and the Charlie Hebdo thing came up. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing like the Je suis Charlie thing, and I think it's a terrible tragedy what happened, but also like people drawing these, what I consider to be pretty disgusting racial stereotypes of Middle Eastern people, Asian people, of immigrants, and they're heroes. You know, they're being lauded as heroes of free speech, and I think that was the moment where I was like, I think I just want to make comics about people of color for the moment, you know, out of desperation, I guess.
In Malaysia, is there colorism going on?
There's a lot of colorism going on, but there's also just a lot of capitalism going on. It's like when my friends come and visit me, it's like they're on the highway and the first thing they see is a billboard with Scarlett Johansson wearing like an expensive watch, and they go, well, what's she doing here? But that's all over Malaysia. You won't see an Asian person on a billboard unless it's advertising like a curry, right. You know. That's on the other side of the world, so.
Like when I go to Asia and when I go to like Taiwan, there's so many like Taylor Swift posters everywhere. I'm like, damn, yeah. Taylor, you're making some money. All right, questions. Rupert, you said that in an email to me, you said you would love to discuss the messages in the work that tend towards the political and social commentaries, like the subversion that you love to do. I love to do that too. I'm one of those people who just like, they don't have to know, just do it. Don't ask permission, just get it done. And then if they pay attention to it and notice it, well, good. Because I used to do that in my work in my house all the time. Like, I would have characters speak Spanish only if they're immigrants. Why should I explain and like a little below what they're saying? When in the real world, if you're talking Spanish and no one understands it, that's just what it is, you know? Let them Google it, you know?
I just got into an internet fight about that.
Really? Mention Aquamaria. She's my only Spanish-speaking girl. But and again, like having a gay character, like my Faye character in Blood Syndicate, no one knew he was gay. But I read in the Bible that he was, but the reveal wasn't until the 9th issue. So you have people falling in love with this character and like really, really loving him. And then afterwards, I would get like members from like gangs. You know what? I don't care. He's a man. He's my boy. And it just feels so good. So I think that's my way of doing subversion, where I just do it and don't ask permission and just get it done, especially if they're not paying attention. You know? How do you do that? Do you deal with subversion at all in any of your work? I guess you don't have to. It's like out in the open, everything.
Well, it's interesting that I would say so early in my career, I ended up doing that. After all these people, administrators, faculty members and students had bought the Brown Bomber T-shirts, I had them come out. I don't know that it was really that much of a shock in that, even within the comic strip as it ran at the college, I dealt with those types of issues. But it was, it's just interesting to me that it happened so early, because that was in like 70, 78 that I did it. And really at that time, the Brown Bomber as a character, even in my mind, wasn't really fully formed. I only used him as a vehicle to express, you know, a lot of what I felt was going on the college campus, and to just like the name of my comic strip later on, what the work I did on the college campus was cathartic for me. And then later on, in terms of the comic strip really being published in a lot of lesbian and gay publications, I was switching back and forth to dealing with issues involving people of color, and then actual queer issues. And there's this one comic strip I did that was really important for me to do, and it was a really good example of the way I like to use my comic strip. I remember when there was this controversy when Eddie Murphy referred to gay men as faggots. And I was very aware that Truman Capote used to use the N-word about black people. And so within my strip, I really wanted to point out the fact that gay men were so easily outraged by Eddie Murphy's homophobia, but they could care less about the fact that there's so many elements in our community that were racist and sexist. So I really always liked being able to highlight the kinds of things and somehow prompt people to think about things in a certain way that they may not normally think of. So that was my way of being subversive. That's
a great segue to, is there a problem with the overall gay community with people of color representations? Do you find that? Have you found that? Give us some instances, like where?
Well, unfortunately, we have something called Twitter. And on Twitter,
that generation.
And on Twitter, we have people who like to try to eject into the ether 140 characters of how they're feeling about a current situation. Let's say Dr. David Dow, for instance. Mm-hmm. And in those situations, they might forget about people of color in that instance and think because they're queer or because how they identify that they are akin to people of color, and therefore they make a joke towards that situation. A joke towards brutality that they'll never face, a joke towards racial abuse that they'll never understand or even have a comprehension of, and they'll try to then flip it because they won't acknowledge the fact that they are mistaken, and then try to only listen to white voices that then respond to them, reiterating the same things that we are then saying to them as far as why we are mad in the first place. And then the clarity moment happens, their apology, but it's only to their white audience and not towards anyone of color.
One thing that bothers me about sometimes when you think about like the bear community, or like everything's like this default status. So in America, it tends to be white. I mean, the queer community tends to be white. The artist community tends to be white. The bear community tends to be white. And this whole thing about like bear is more than hair. I mean, I go to all over the world, and there's so many bear communities there, and not one of them, you know, with blue eyes and blonde hair. And it's a little frustrating to see how much of the media supports those kind of images, but then totally forget about everybody on the side. And then, like for instance, the gay parties you see on TV, where you'll have like the really hot black guy and his white boyfriend, but you never see two people of color dating each other on TV. It's always like the white person and their accessory, or the white person and their, the social work and stuff like that. So those little kind of images in there of the overall community is what kind of really upsets me when I see it, especially on TV. It's just, I don't want to break this.
It's even in our YA literature. I know recently American Heart was announced, and a lot of people have a problem with it as far as it's supposed to be the Huckleberry Finn adventure of a young white girl and a Muslim American woman who she's hiding and traipsing across America. Yay. So in this adventure, when people began to express that they were not excited about this book or a retelling of Huckleberry Finn, the response by certain queer community members were, well, there might be a queer relationship in this, so that's one for us anyway. So as long as this Muslim woman from escaping from an internment camp was somehow a lesbian or queer in some factoid way, that made it a-okay.
What example of a character of color was done so horribly that you just want to send anyone involved like straight to the sun? I mean,
shit, that's a lot.
no, just one. And I'll start with mine because, you know, I have this thing about like Marvel Comics. Yeah, I know. But they had this character. I think he was like one of the Buckies. He was the Black Bucky, and they brought back the Black Bucky. So this sounds it's terrible everywhere. And the Hulk, he came back not only as really cool, and he has skateboard and everything like that, but he had HIV. And this is back during the early days. It was like, so they thought they were doing like this great thing by having this character there, and he was dying. He was like, basically, he found out he was sick. He got sick, and within 2 issues, and he was dying. And the Hulk had to think about, wow, should I give him some of my blood? Maybe that'll save him. But then he thought, no, it's too much of a chance because what if the Hulk mutates the virus, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And then he died. And he was the only representation of a character with HIV, a young person with HIV of color in Marvel Comics, which hit millions of readers. And to treat him like that and can you imagine you're a young black kid with HIV and you read that, it's like you basically have no hope, not even the Hulk can fucking save you, right? So it just hard, that just got me. So that was like a total failure, I thought, in every way. So do you have anybody like that?
I can't really think of any. I was just happy to see black characters.
I read so many webcomics to wash all this mainstream crap out of my brain that I don't really have a whole lot of mainstream pull as far as like the things that I look forward to. Most queer creators of color, don't even get any sort of notoriety. No people of like higher standings that they even look up to will really go to bat for them or promote for them. So therefore I have to find them wherever I can. Most of the time I find them on LGBTQ webcomics.com because that's a really good source. And I also look for people as far as just Tumblr posts are concerned and their Twitters. So I think there's a lot of cool representation.
Please. I think
one just came to mind, I guess. Maybe every character in Craig Thompson's Habibi. This amazing, I don't know if everyone's read it, it's like a really uplifting, sort of empowering book. It's like Kendall Jenner's Pepsi ad, you know? Basically, Craig Thompson went to, I guess he went to Morocco a couple of years before.
He did like a
writing the book.
futuristic kind of like story.
Yeah. He had never like lived in a Muslim community. He had never visited a Muslim country before, but he was so, enamored by the beauty of their culture and how their buildings looked, and he just wanted to make this huge screed about, love, and it's a beautiful book, I gotta say. He knows how to use a brush.
Full of rape and emasculation and all this kind of.
But he really solves all the problems of the Middle East in like concise 500 pages,
It was a beautifully drawn book, I'll give it that.
Yeah.
And I love those characters, but they were still treated like shit and wiped across everything and every horrible thing that happened to them, and it was like really sad.
I mean, I guess we could talk about Nameless City, what is it? The Faith Aaron Hicks book, because I know the Asian American community is not happy about that at all. So just gonna point that one out.
Okay. How about like the Avatar movie?
Which one?
The first, the Aang.
No, I was like Space Pocahontas or that bullshit, and then you've got
Both of them, right.
And then you've got the terrible I believe is how they properly pronounce it in the movie. Yeah, that was a piece of shit.
Okay, all right, enough haterade. Can you give me examples of characters of color that are done just right, and tell me why they work?
I think, Huey in the Boondocks is probably one of my favorite characters of color. I just like, I think that it's not just how the character is written, but how the character interacts with different kinds of black people with different perspectives. And I think, that your question was for... Clearly, I don't read enough comics, I guess. Yeah. But when you ask, what's a character of color that's not done well, and the only answer I could think of was, I think you have to really. I tread lightly as a reader when I'm reading a book that's primarily about characters of color by people who are not of that group. And it could be a person of color doing it about a different person of color group, because I always think with so few representations, the least interesting question that can be answered in a comic is that by someone who's an outsider. You know, I think we've had so many centuries of voices of people, say, as a person of African descent, writing about black people in a comic context with interesting results, that I feel like there's so many great stories that people of African descent or Asian American folks or Native American folks still have to tell about their groups that are just going to be so amazing, and we haven't even had the time, and there aren't enough people to tell the stories yet. And so I feel like because of power and all these other things and privilege, sometimes when someone comes in and writes a story, like, what was the one you were talking about with the Muslim? Habibi. Sometimes those stories come and take up so much of the air in the room that then, you know, people in the wings trying to write about their own marginalized identity can't get the space to be seen, which is an overarching problem. It's not about one specific comic, but it's about the construct, I think.
You want to?
I really started reading comic books. I don't know what I think it's called the golden era, and I used to really get into the Fantastic Four, and I truly believe that the introduction of the Black Panther during the period that the Black Panther was introduced was really much more revolutionary than people could imagine. I mean, out of the minds of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby to have created in the 60s an African prince who was the head of his country, and there was this very rare metal that was the basis of the country's power. There was something about the way the Black Panther was rolled out and his whole mythology that was shocking to me at the time, and really effective, and I think made all the more effective that it was two white men who created him.
I think more Jack Kirby than Stan Lee. I think Jack Kirby had an amazing subversive streak to him, that he was just like, he would read the Times and he would try to say something about it, and I think that was just about him. And I think he didn't get the credit he should have gotten for most of those characters.
And I hesitated to even say it because comic books, they go through so many reboots. I kind of don't know the current state of the Black Panther in the comic
Well, Black Panther
books.
is written by a Pulitzer Prize-winning author. Is it Pulitzer, or did he get a MacArthur grant? Was it MacArthur? Okay, MacArthur grant. He's written by, he's drawn by actually African-American artists, male and female. So there's actually... Finally, right? Wakanda, right?
Very cool.
Coast, right?
Yeah. Ta-Nehisi Coates and...
on Sisters of Wakanda with Afua Richardson.
Yeah, and it's selling very fucking well. And that's amazing. That's pretty good. It's a great chance. Aletha Martinez, who was treated like shit from Marvel all these years because she not only was black, but she was female and Latina. So they didn't know what to do with her and stuff like that. And for most of her career, she signed her name A. Martinez so they wouldn't know she was a woman. Wow. And her style is just as like kick-ass as anybody else. So I'm happy it's going there. But again, Black Panther was created by a white guy. And sometimes we're very happy about that.
I got a character for you.
Great.
That I realized was very badly written. Tyrock.
Tyrock.
Tyrock is from the Legion of Superheroes.
With those hot pants.
Right, with the outfit was hot. The outfit was hot. The afro was hot. Right. But in the future, Superboy, young Superman, goes back and forth in time, and he hooks up with all these other teenagers, and they save the world. But they only had one black superhero, and that was Tyrock. Nobody knew, well, where was his people? It turns out his people were on an island that floated in and out of time. So there weren't even black people in the future, just this one.
And it had to pop in, it had to blink into existence and then go away. For like,
right. And then his power was he could scream.
Right.
So even he was just loud.
And that was a planet, that was an island on Krypton. Remember the black tribe in Krypton?
That's right.
So they couldn't have black people in Krypton because black people lived in one island would disappear every once in a while.
Right.
It's like, yes, great writing. Thank you very much. Yeah. Notice that we're nerds, so we tend to deal with comics. But I think one of the things, what about allowing other people of color from other races? Like, for instance, do you think people are doing a good job in Japan with characters of color? Is that possible? Is they doing that?
Oh, no.
Or is there like maybe something they need to do? And what do you think about alliances between groups of color? Because I think that's something that's really powerful right now that's happening. I think it's in Los Angeles that the Hmong tribe, the Hmong people from Los Angeles have a how you call it? The Vietnamese people from Los Angeles are having activities together at a place that was built that place for young black girls, so that they're sharing a community and then doing a lot of stuff together, and it's like forming this really strong alliance. And I think that's something that's missing from the work, from comics work or movie work. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think those alliances are strong, and I feel like a lot of marginalized groups, a lot of groups of people of color, but also like gay people and people of color are often played off against each other by the dominant, narrative, right? It's sort of like, how many times have you heard the whole like, oh, well, Black and Latino people don't like gay marriage, and that's why Prop 8 came through, or Muslims don't like women and gay people, and there's no such thing as a gay Muslim, of course. So I think like building those bridges and kind of like fighting that myth of the idea that there are these kind of invisible, ancient rivalries needs to be fought, and you can't do that without building communities.
Do you feel comfortable calling someone out when they're not doing a good job? Like, for instance, that Man with the Iron Fist movie, right?
Iron Fistula? I love that movie.
You like them? I thought it was just so crap.
I feel like it's hard. For me, it's easier to call someone out in my community, and it's harder to. I have a huge problem about this. Maybe you can give me some advice. Actually, I find it really hard to call out like a white person who's making a really bad mistake, especially if they have like pure intentions and they're just like, I just want to help. And I'm just like, oh, I can't tell you you're making a mistake. I have to delegate that to someone else.
I usually just start with, you're making a mistake. Stop tweeting right now. Let's go have a conversation on the side. Now that's if I'm feeling nice. Otherwise, I just put it out in the public. I don't really have to hide blasting someone, but I also don't have to like drag them through the mud, so to speak. It always depends on the situation. I mean, if they're gonna get loud and proud about their opinion, well, I guess I can get loud and proud about mine right on back. But if they're having an outward idea or opinion that might just be veering towards dumb no-go street, then I just pat them on the head, tell them come on over, and we'll have a little chat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
These again, I think, from their own art, but it's like really good ways to deal with color. So, someone gave me a hair file.
Me.
Yes. Please tell me.
Stop drawing silken afros, please, for the love of God. Hair has texture to it. If you're gonna draw afros, look at a damn afro. Understand what an afro might appear like. It's not a waterfall of hair. It is beautiful hair that is buoyant. I know mine's all gone right now, but that's because I finished a book. But usually it's really huge. Every time I finish a book, I cut off my hair. It's just a thing that I like to do. It's new growth for a new project, so everybody's got their own way about it. Lenny Kravitz, old school. That's like 2004, still on my side, Lenny Kravitz. All right, and then over here, we just have some examples of what a curly perm mixed with an afro might look like, with just a few bit of hair products used. And then there's natural hair afro, and then there's my beautiful god over there. Woo! Love that boo. But there are many ways that you can stylize an afro, not to just be a big poof, a bouffant, or a freaking ball or a spear upon our heads. So just take notice. Use Google Images. Sometimes it's racist, but it still works. And just
like America, right?
Yeah. When you have a black person and the like sixth person is this white guy, and you're like, that's not a black person, Google, and it's like, yes, it is. It's like, listen. Anyway, so just take reference. Understand the natural complexities that come with hair. Just like straight hair can be bleached and blonde and ombre and all sorts of other bullshit, we can do the same with our own hair. So maybe go check it out.
On top of that, please start drawing Latinos with a little bit of color in them. Not that same like red color they have in the comic book since I was a kid. They've all come in all different shades, from Peru. Slavery was everywhere, and it's mixed up with the blood, indigenous people, and there's a lot of Asian mixed up in there. So we all have different shapes, and then you ask any Puerto Rican family that they have 5 different, shades in the same brood. It's just think about our hair, think about our face, our lips, our facial expressions. We're not all the same, Maria or Puta Maria. Whatever the name is. Also,
if you're going to use shading tones on black people, purple is not the only color for black, so just letting you know there. We've got multiple shades that we can induce in our face, including red when we're blushing.
Do you know the Jamin Hunsu? He's one of my favorite actors. But in some movies, he has such a beautiful kind of like bluish black that I've never seen reproduced in the comic. And it's like, I want one of these characters to have that beautiful kind of like dark skin. But I guess we have to invent it.
Show you later.
You do? Which Pantone number?
Just him?
I probably already have it.
I'll share with the fam.
Group viewing.
United Colors of
No
Baltimore.
purple.
Very nice. This is so hot. I'm sorry, I had to put this in there. Look at that.
You see, these are my people. I just, I think most of my people were really thin to begin with. But that was because I had my own body images about being very thin. So now I'm bulking up my boys.
Okay. Are you going to the gym too?
Am I going where?
To the gym too?
The gym.
For reference.
Is that a bar?
Okay. What's the gym? Okay. Who put this here?
Oh, me.
Oh.
Hey.
I thought it was really important to do, I came from animation, and I feel like character sheets are really important. For me, it always annoyed me when we got a character of color who looked like a character of color until they smiled or I love like facial tics. I love like things that people do with their faces. I feel like that is as much character as, what color your hair is or how big your eyebrows are, and like really like observing people and getting specific moments down that say something, the way their cheeks look and everything are really, really, I feel like the one thing people of color are robbed of in terms of characters a lot is how funny they can look. Like, white people can look real funny, but since there's always normally one character of color, they have to look pretty standard, I'm not talking about racial caricature necessarily, but like, if we have like 3 characters of color, then we can have like one with a long face, one with kind of ratty face, one with like, that's
a bottom lip.
With a bottom lip. Yeah.
A top lip. It's very Mowgli, this guy too. Yeah.
Super cute.
Yeah.
Kawaii. Here's another question, real quick, because I want to give time for the audience too. Do you ever feel guilty when you creating a character that's like a total like reprehensible asshole, like somebody who's really super racist and super like super homophobic and just like really nasty and stuff like that? Knowing that there's like a really dearth of characters with color, do you ever feel weird about that, or is that just me? I think it's just me. Look at that. No,
I don't think I ever feel guilty with coming up with that type of character because, right, they exist. And, right, it doesn't make them bad because you may not like that character. It's just...
I was at the Comic-Con in San Diego, and we were talking about the same thing about queer characters. Right. And the writers, James Robinson, he goes, well, I can't do it. I feel like it's not ready time to make a villain that's queer. And I'm like, it's like, why? It's like, I don't want to, how are we going to dress them in leather? It's like, all this stuff started coming out. I was like, oh my God.
I mean, I think it also, in the 21st century, that's what being free is about. Being able to create characters who are kind of 360-degree people.
Right.
I think about, I'm a literary historian, as I mentioned earlier today, and so, teaching, Donald Trump's favorite friend, Frederick Douglass, in the 19th century, could only write about himself as a kind of desexualized, and he was a very sexual person actually in real life, but desexualized person on a pedestal, you know, all the kind of role model talk. You know, one of the things that's so great about things like science fiction and speculative fiction and comics in the 21st century is people of color are writing people who are absolutely scandalous. And, you know, Octavia Butler's are kind of my role model
My God,
in doing
that's
that.
so much.
And so you gotta create those characters. That's what it means to take back the ability to write for yourself. You don't have to, you know, write someone who's going to make everybody feel like your particular group is good. You know, it's you know, there are people who are going to think what they're going to think, but my work is mine, and so I get to write the kind of folks who are really fun. You know.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to open up for questions in the audience. We have a little bit of time left. Yes.
So I just want to preface this, I don't want to offend anybody, but I feel
We didn't care.
one of the questions I have is that sometimes because we have such a dearth of representation, that some characters will come almost like a standard bearer, and particularly I want to know how you guys feel about Storm from the X-Men in terms of being a black woman that a lot of people, including myself, really idolize. But then as I grew older, I started to think about, you know, her skin keeps getting lighter and lighter. Her eyes have always been blue. Her hair texture is completely different from all the people around her, all the black people around her, and color. So how do you feel about that representation? And weighing it against how there's so few, or there were so few black women in comics in the first place?
Well, Chris Claremont once tried to change her ethnicity. He was trying to explain to her that her mutation came from the mix of the best of DNA of all over the world, and that she wasn't really African American and stuff like that. And she's been fucked with for a very long time. But when she first came out with that cat-like face and that big hair, and the fact that she was an African goddess who was born in Harlem, who lived on fucking Cairo, I mean, she was like this fabulous character. But you're right, she married the only other like African superhero that was right. It just seems like so many people go through them and make them. And that's another thing I teach my kids. Don't worry so much about those characters. They don't belong to you. They weren't made for you. They weren't made by you. And they're making money for somebody else. Make your own characters, and you want to do your representation the way you want to, do it in your own character. And you like her doll, buy her doll. But don't get upset that she married this guy instead of the Indian guy. Okay, or the American Indian guy. Okay? But that's my opinion. What's your opinion on Storm?
You know, I enjoy X-Men, and I enjoy some of that series, but not because I don't look at it. I don't look to that series to help me feel affirmed as a person of African descent. And so, you know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I didn't think Storm is black, but that's really tangential to what I find interesting. You know, when I really am looking for a reflection of a blackness to which I can relate and that feels like an affirming representation, I just look in other places. You know, like John Jennings, you know, was just part of a collaboration that created Kindred as a graphic novel, and that, and I love looking at the character in that, you know, this opposite of the kind of hyper-feminine superhero figure of Storm is this African-American woman who keeps traveling back through time to save her white ancestors. And so I think it's, you know, one of the things that keeps me happy in the, you know, I love media. I love pop culture. I love binge watching and, you know, reading graphic novels when I should be grading papers. But one of the things that keeps me happy is I keep my expectations tempered too. I understand the publisher, or I try to understand what my expectations should be for the form, and so it's hard for me to feel disappointed, but I still can bring a critical eye, and I can say, well, this could be done better. If they actually wanted this to be something that would make black folks feel good about being black, they need to do this, this, and this, but that's not, I'm not going to read that as one of the goals of this text. I'm going to read it to entertain and to introduce other stuff, and so, yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Any more questions?
with that character, but don't tell their story. Like you are just trying to, you have a character that is of this group. You're not trying to say, I'm going to be telling the only story of this group. And like how would you apply that if you want to create characters that you're not?
I can get that one. When I put out my comic book, it came out digitally. Somebody reviewed it. And his perspective was, well, I don't think the character should have done that. Well, I wouldn't have had the character do this. It's my story. And he made it clear that he was white. I think he may have been gay. But it's like, it's not your story to tell. Let me tell my story. If you don't like the journey, you can get off. But this is my journey. This is what my people go through. And being in DC, it really is kind of black-white. It's not even a whole bunch of other cultures, but within my black community, these are the things that I went through. So I'm going to tell them the way that I need to tell them. And everybody doesn't always seem to understand that. And it's not a reflection of other cultures. It's just, this is my story. This is his story, his story.
Kind of a story, yeah.
And everybody up here.
I'm lucky that I'm Puerto Rican. You know that, right? Because I get to go into my DNA and I get to pull out so much shit from there. And I'm like, you know what? I can write about African because I got the slavery in me. I can write about indigenous people. I got the marginalized. I got the people who were killed. I got so much different blood in me that this is the part that really got me when I started doing research for my Taino stories. I'm doing stories about before Columbus and what happened to the people and stuff like that. And when I started reading that, I felt this like break in my heart. It was just like this thing that I just couldn't get over. It's just like pain. And I feel like, everyone thinks these people are all dead. It's like, but if you check our DNA, it's like we're up to 60% Taino. It's like, what the fuck is going on here? Why are they so totally erased? So I know that I can say that story because I feel that. I feel like this echo in my heart. I have to let out on paper, But I think that's some of the stuff that we have to do. We have this echo that has to be recorded, Yeah. Anyway.
So where's the balance, if you will? Because at one point you were saying, as you were looking at the pictures of the Afro, that any type of cartoonist should do their research on any group of ethnicity to make sure that they are describing them accurately. But then you also say, I'm going to tell my own story. So I guess my question is, why would you have to do research if it is in fact your story, no matter whether that story is based on research or not?
Well, we don't have much real stuff about Taínos, so part of that indigenous stuff I have to do research on. I have to do research about attitudes and things I don't want to get wrong, because if I don't belong, if I'm not part of the active black community, I'm part of the Latino community, I have to go with, okay, what's going on here, what's going on there, how do we intersect? And even though we live together in the Bronx, there's still stuff that's happening separate, and I have to just check, I want to be fair. I don't want to do it totally from like my point of view, because that's maybe not fair to the character I'm creating, That they when I used to work for Milestone, people used to question me all the time, say, well, Latino, why are you working for a black company? Not realizing that I have all these like black, Latino, Asian characters that I have to do. I'm like the steward of these characters. And it's like, well, I'm Latino and we're people of color, and we're telling stories about all people of color together, and sometimes they intersect, and we have to like kind of share our stories with other characters and stuff like that. But that's my point of view. I mean, you guys might have a different take on that.
I mean, I do journalism comics, and I write about trans people and immigrants and refugees who aren't me, and I'm just always ready to fuck up. I'm ready to get it wrong, and when someone calls me on it, I'm ready to apologize, like literally properly apologize, and not duck and roll behind my one friend that when you start an apology with, but my one trans friend said that was okay, then you're still, don't say that. They're not shields, and I feel like it's really important to accept that if you tell anyone else's story, you're probably going to fuck up at some point. I mean, I have and I will, but if you're not willing to do that, then, don't tell someone else's story, right?
I got over my own narcissism and ego, and I added something called a co-writer to my story. It was like the most simplest thing in the world. Saying, hey, person with that actual experience that I want to put into this story, why don't you actually write and tell me that experience, and we do it together, and we both get paid. You like that thinking, right? Yeah.
A lot of people will write about whoever the fuck they want, especially, white males. They tend to write everything about everything because, of course, it's valid if the white male does it. And they don't ask permission. They never ask permission. They're fearless about it. They can write about anything they want to, and it's fine. And I think us as people of color, we always kind of want to ask permission or do the right research. We want to do right. But I know we fuck up a lot. I mean,
Even to write about ourselves, sometimes we want to have
Yeah.
permission. You know, I think that I felt like I was like, can I? Is that possible? And sad, you know.
we're so sensitive, aren't we?
So sad.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Nika, you mentioned that webcomics is a space.
Hey, I know you.
I was wondering what's on your reading list lately for cartoons of color online. We're just killing it.
Oh my god, I just forgot her last name. So IMA does a comic called Undivine, which is about a Catholic school in the middle of Peru where a kid finds a demonic tome in a secret room and summons a succubus-like demon into their life, and now it's screwed to high holy hell. I really enjoy it and dig it. IMA also happens to be Cuban, and she's amazing, and I super, super love her eye for color because it's vivid and bold. I'm also following, let me think, you asked me on like a day when I don't have my update list with me. Oh, okay. Well, why don't you just say Mildred Louis? All right. So, Mildred Louis of Agents of the Realm. You've got Atmaja Panya of Travelogue. You've got. Are you just gonna make me name everyone in Elements now? Because that's what's literally about to happen. You've got James F. Wright of Nutmeg Comics. Let me see. I'm trying to think of what I just read. Oh yeah, and The Meek by Dershing Helmer. So, check it out.
Anybody else have any tips? Any stuff they're reading now that they think, like I love what's the Tokyo Zombie manga? I Am Hero. I just fell in love with that thing so much, and it's like sexist and all fucked up. But I'm like, oh my god, it's like so good. So I would really recommend that one. But
Sexist fucked up. I recommend it.
yeah, but it's like almost talking about the sexism as they do it, which is like interesting.
My girlfriend works on that book.
Yeah,
The translations. Dark Horse gets a lot of books, a lot of manga, and I read Kurosaki Corpse Delivery.
You gotta hook me up with her. I need a translator.
I'm just saying, like, I still super fucking love manga. Like, it is 100% my jam, my tea, my toast. It makes me really happy, and it's problematic as fuck for a lot of people, and I acknowledge that 100%. Sorry.
But how beautiful that is eaten up by kids of color. I mean, when I work for the library system in New York, and it's just like all the books are taken out, and it's just worn by kids of color. I love it.
This isn't a webcomic, but I do have to mention this. Graduating in the class under me in CCS is a brilliant young artist, Robin Brooke Smith, and I feel like look out for that name. She wrote a mini comic called The Saddest, Angriest Black Girl in Town about living in White River Junction, and her work is really, really strong and really fantastic. And it's gotten on a couple of lists already, but that's great stuff. Yeah.
And I just, it's not a webcomic at all, it's a graphic novel, but T. Boui's The Best We Could Do is really amazing. Story of the comic artist and writer and her family coming from Vietnam, and amazing work, just really profound. And beautifully drawn.
Nobody else is like seeing any kind of like really juicy things. I love a Korean drama. I love it so much that I feel like embarrassed by it, but I am. Any other questions? There we go.
T. Franklin for Big Gun Love just won the Crystal Comics Career Press Grant.
Is it good? Jennifer, you don't have a question for us? By the way.
I'm just really happy about this panel. You know, when I first started careers in comics, the very first panel that I ever created was People of Color panel. This is really why this conference exists. So thank you all.
Thank you for creating it.
Yeah, that was fabulous.
Now let's bash on more white people. No.
Excuse me.
How about
I wanted to acknowledge Jennifer being here and the work that you guys, the work that you do to pull together such a variety of panels and cartoonists. I've been in awe of the involvement that I've had in the conferences, of the one in New York and the one here. You are amazing. I think there's something about your energy and your drive that is so clear to me so clear that you have passion for the work we do. And I think for you to be in this audience of people, I think we really need to acknowledge the part you've played in bringing us all together.
Can I ask one final question? Outside of your own personal group, what do you think is a group that's not getting enough representation in comics or media or anything like that you really wish they would either get stepped up or just start complaining about it more?
Indigenous people.
Indigenous people, yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Completely, utterly, I feel it's just a complete failure.
Arabs,
Arabs?
American Samoa.
Which one?
American Samoa.
Samoan, okay. Anybody else?
Like everybody who thinks Asia is just one thing. It's not.
Not everyone's
South Koreans do a
Chinese,
lot
yeah.
for comics these days, but I don't feel like a lot of South Korean creators are particularly nurtured or even given respect in this community.
And they have a really, really good like comics life in Korea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say trans men of color.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
The entire community.
Everybody needs help. But isn't it nice that we're working on this and we're like fighting and pushing forward and putting these things on paper and digital stuff and we're just getting there? It's all this music coming out that didn't play before. Really, even do you think that Donald Trump actually made things better for us in a way that we're fighting harder now? We're just like really like aggressive about it? Or no?
Agreed.
Before that asshole.
Okay, yeah.
I just want to say here too about Indigenous people in comics. There's an awesome Indigenous con that I think just started this past year. So definitely go to it.
Where is it?
I believe it's in New Mexico. I have people I can make out in time, but once I wrote for the first year, and I'm hoping to bring it out here to the next one.
That is absolutely correct.
Very nice. Is there like I'll ask Jennifer, is there like do people get to put their comments and stuff on a website afterwards, after the thing? And links and stuff like that? You could try. I'll help, okay. All right, well I guess, did I finish early? Or did I finish on time?
I think on time.
On time, look at that. Woo! All right. Thank you very much, folks. Thank you, Juan Mans, Taneka Stotts, Casimir Lee Escanda, Rupert Kinnard, Ivan Blurs, and Victor Hodge. Thank you so much. Let's go out and get drunk. Cosmos.
Ivan, we want to thank you for being a really great moderator.
You were a very great moderator. Thank you,
Thank you. Yeah, Bronx.